relevant at all. But Dr. Bannor, you have been quite passionate about the key drivers of this Forex, from deficit financing, trade balance, etc., etc., etc. There's been arguments that Ghana has gone through this cyclical nature of Forex. I mean, Dr. Tiahene talked about from 2007, when it was 0.75, till today is now 50, and an average of 120 depreciation a year. That is not pleasant in the ears of everybody. That means that we've had a problem, a systemic problem in this country all over, because our fundamentals have been weak. From where you sit, and I can see you're a numbers guy, you always talk about numbers. From where you sit, if you look at the key drivers of Forex with respect to the fundamentals, i.e. deficit finding, tax revenue as a proportion of GDP, etc., 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 do you think we are making progress?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So like you rightly said, I think the numbers will speak to whether we are making progress or not. Now, first of all, I want to begin by categorically stating that we cannot arrest the dollar with sweet talk. We can only arrest the dollar with effective, implementable policies. So we can only use policies to arrest the dollar. There is no other way aside this. There should be an intentional policy. Now, so you spoke about numbers, and like I mentioned earlier, one of the areas that we'll be spending so much as a country to import is the agricultural sector. In fact, in 2022, we spent 2.6 billion on agricultural products. And when I talk about these agricultural products, the major products here are rice, wheat, and poultry. Now, if you look at the numbers between 2021 to 2023, now, between 2021 to 2023, rice import actually declined by 45.3% between that period. And this did not happen as a result of miracle or prayers. It happened because there was deliberate intervention through the Planting for Food and Jobs, through the siting of critical rice processing factories across the country. So this is what the data is saying. Now, further into the data, you could see that the total rice import, which in 2021, that is 2021, which was 805,000 metric tons, fell to 650,000 metric tons in 2022, and subsequently to 440,000 metric tons in 2023. So this is telling that clearly we are doing something right. So if previously we were spending close to 2.6 billion to import these products, and today it is declining by almost 50%, then it tells us that we are saving close to about 1.5 billion thereabout every year on just importation of rice. So clearly, in terms of policy-wise, we are doing something right. Now, another critical angle that we also look at is the car sector, the transportation sector, that we import close to about 120,000 cars, which costs us over 1.14 billion a year. However, because of policy-wise, we have about 6 car assembling plants in Ghana. Now, these 6 car assembling plants can annually produce 120,000 brand new cars, because I have already stated that out of this 120,000 cars that we bring in, 90% are second-hand. So what is left, Mr. Chairman, is to have a good credit system. Now, talking about good credit system is whereby you have a robust, efficient banking sector. And Mr. Chairman, this is where policy becomes critical. And this is where restructuring of the financial sector makes a lot of sense. Because if you don't have a robust financial system, just like you have in South Africa, then of course, you cannot guarantee loans for individuals to have access to car. Now, in South Africa, for example, where I taught at university. Now, once you finish university and you start working, you have the automobile companies chasing you for car. You go and you don't need to pay a dime in order to own a car. In Ghana, it's the opposite. Why? Because we also don't have an efficient, good credit rating system. So these are systemic issues that we need to address. And for that matter, if we had any policymaker who will be able to address these systemic issues, then clearly we will be making frantic progress. Then we go to the fiscal deficit, Mr. Chairman. Now, the fiscal deficit over the years, and when I talk about the fiscal deficit, is a situation whereby you have always your revenue being less than your expenditure. That if you look at the data from 2012, for example, 2012, we did the last 15 years was where we have one of our worst fiscal deficit of 11.6% of GDP. Now, what is the repercussions on exchange rate depreciation? Now, when you have a fiscal deficit, you have two ways out. For example, if you're a man and you live with your wife and you have kids, and you earn 2,000 cedis a month, and then at the end of the month, the bills that you are supposed to pay, including the feeding fees and your kids' school fees, including the housekeeping money, is about 2,500. Then you are always found to go and look for 500 Ghana cedis to come and augment your 2,000 Ghana cedis. Now, if you are a husband, you may have two options. Your first option is to go to a friend or a family member who might give you that 500 cedis interest-free. Now, if you don't have a family member or a friend who will give you that 500 cedis, then the next option is for you to go outside there and look for a loan, which will obviously come with an interest. Similar to the case of any government across the world. Once you have a huge deficit and your central bank may not be in the position to finance that deficit, then you are compelled to go out there and borrow. Now, remember that in most of the loans that we have accrued over the years, these are loans that are denominated in foreign exchange, to be precise, the US dollar. Now, let me take you back to the 2024 budget statement that was read to Parliament in November. Now, in the 2024 budget, if you look critically at the budget, now the total government expenditure is about 220 billion Ghana cedis. Now, out of these 220 billion Ghana cedis, we are having 119 billion Ghana cedis going into the payment of, emoluments and servicing of loans. Now, in servicing of loans, actually, we are spending close to about 55.6 or 9 billion Ghana cedis just to service interest on loan. Now, the total amount of money that is going to the MMDAs that we all see across the length and breadth of this country is roughly around 38 billion Ghana cedis, far less than what we are using to service loan. And these are loans that have been accrued over the years. And once you allocate this money, you are not going to pay those you owe in Ghana cedis. You are going to pay them in dollars. In essence, you need to convert this cedi into what? Into hard cash US dollar before you be able to pay those that you owe. And that brings a lot of pressure. But thank God over the years, I mean, in 2023, we're having a fiscal deficit of, I think, about 4.6%, which is actually lower than what we have in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which was passed in 2021. So policy-wise, yes, we are making some progress, and then we need to consolidate this progress. Lastly, what I want to touch on in terms of the policy is the African Continental Free Trade. And we are all aware that African Continental Free Trade is headquarters is in Ghana, Accra here, just a few meters from here. Now, Mr. Chair, how does this help in our trade balances? Now, the African Continental Free Trade has a part that talks about the PAPS, the Pan-African Payment System. Now, what does this do? Because a lot of African countries, including Ghana and all sub-Saharan African countries, we trade less than 20% among ourselves. What it simply means is that even if we want tomatoes, instead of us to go to Kenya and buy tomatoes, we prefer flying to Turkey to buy tomatoes. Now, when you go to Turkey to buy tomatoes, obviously, you would need a medium of exchange, which is the US dollar, to be able to buy these tomatoes. And for that matter, you change your local currency into another denomination, which is the US dollar, before you are able to buy that tomatoes, and that puts pressure on your currency. Now, what the PAPS seeks to do is that if African countries were supposed to engage in direct trade among ourselves, for example, a trader here like my seniors here who are businessmen, could import from any African country without having to pay dollar equivalent of the amounts of money that they are paying for the trade. All that they need is to do this transaction through the PAPS, and then they just pay the cedi equivalent of that money in Naira or in rands or in Kenyan shillings. And for that matter, that will reduce the external pressure that comes onto the cedi. Now, if you look at the African region, sub-Saharan African region, every year, we spend close to 35 billion USD on agricultural products only. Imagine we were trading among ourselves and we need not to change money to dollar and we're using our local currency. That would have actually given us the leverage to have a strong currency just like the US dollar is doing. So, Mr. Chairman, in terms of policy, yes, there are these deliberate policies that I think if we are able to consolidate it, including the energy sector that we talk about with the solar, because in between 2017 to 2020, we spent over 1.5 billion on paying IPPs alone alone in terms of their payment. If we had a solar network whereby we may even change batteries every 10 years, that would have saved us enough of Forex. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love the passion. Before I go to the audience, there's one key fundamental